And let's bring in former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, for more on this. Ambassador Taylor, thank you for being here. Russia is increasingly using these suicide drones that Ian referred to. Here's a video of one circulating online. Officials are also calling this latest attack the largest drone assault on civilian targets since the start of the war. So what do you make of that? Are we seeing a shift in strategy here?
We are, Diane, and the shift in strategy on the part of the Russians is because they're losing on the ground. The Russians cannot win on the battlefield against the Ukrainians on the battlefield. The Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back, and so the shift in strategy is a horrible one, is an immoral one. It's an attack on civilians. It's an attack on civilian targets, it's an attack on apartments, attack on energy, attack on water. This is immoral. It's outrageous. It's war criminal. It's consistent, as the mayor said, with genocide.
Now, Iran's government denies that it is supplying these drones to Russia to use in Ukraine, but their deployment has been widely documented all the way back to September. So what do you think this says about the relationship between Russia and Iran, and what impact could that have, not just in Ukraine, but globally?
So the relationship between Russia and Iran is very interesting. Russia would like to believe it's a superpower, and it doesn't have the ability to replenish its own stocks of weapons. So it has to go to Iran, has to go to North Korea. It has to go to Iran to ask for these drones. So this, Diane, suggests to me that the Russians are in trouble, that Mr. Putin is in trouble. He doesn't have the capability. As I said, he can't win on the battlefield. He's losing on the battlefield when his military goes up against the Ukrainian military. So now he has to go broader. He has to go against civilian targets. And so this has broad implications, as you say, and it's a problem for Putin.
He's also a man with nukes, Ambassador. NATO forces are conducting routine nuclear defense exercises in Europe. How significant is that, given Putin's threats about nuclear weapons?
So these exercises on the NATO side are normal. They're routine. They happen every year. There's nothing to be read into this. But when the president of a country, when the dictator of a country that has nuclear weapons threatens to use these weapons against a country like Ukraine that doesn't have nuclear weapons, a country like Ukraine that gave up its nuclear weapons, that's horrible. That is something to be detested. That's something amazing for us to watch, that the Russians are threatening to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. And you have to take it seriously. I think the odds are still low that he will actually use these. There's no benefit to him. Indeed, the cost would be enormous if he were to do this. But we have to take it seriously. We have to make it clear that if he were to use these nuclear weapons, it would be a disaster for him. It would be a disaster for Russia. And he would be causing himself great damage.
And President Zelenskyy is now asking for more help from the U.S. and its allies. What more can and should the U.S. and allies be doing to support Ukraine at this point?
So, Diane, again, the Russians are conducting an unprovoked attack. Let's remember, there's no reason for the Russians to have attacked Ukraine in the first place 8 months ago. There was no reason. There was no reason for them to attack 8 years ago in 2014. So the Russians' unprovoked attack, and the Ukrainians are defending themselves, but Diane, they're also defending Europe. They are defending the West. And so, in answer to your question, we should provide all of the weapons that they need, in particular the air defense, not just the air defense, the long-range missiles to go after the targets in Ukraine, the Russian targets in Ukraine, well behind the front lines. We need to support the Ukrainians so that they can push the Russians out of their country. This unprovoked attack cannot go unanswered.
Meanwhile, thousands of Russians have been fleeing the country amid the military draft there, some even traveling to Alaska to try to avoid it. Does that tell you anything about the level of support in Russia for this war now? Is that changing?
It is changing, and that partial mobilization, or indeed broader mobilization that Putin is executing right now, trying to execute, failing to execute, that's having an effect on the politics in Russia. You can see it for exactly as you say. There are men fleeing Russia. They don't want to fight this war. Putin's got problems on his right. He is getting pressure from both the right and the left, from the people in the streets and the people fleeing the country, as well as these military nationalists on the right. He is under great pressure. So I think we're seeing the problems that Putin is facing right now.
But Zelenskyy says there is no room for negotiation with Putin. So do you see an off-ramp for Vladimir Putin in this war?
Then the off-ramp is what President Putin must find. There's no off-ramp that the Ukrainians will provide. Ukrainians are defending their own territory. They'll defend every inch of their territory. So there's no off-ramp coming from the Ukrainians. There's no off-ramp coming from the West. But you're right, Putin does need an off-ramp. He needs to get out of, he's made a blunder. This is a disaster for him and for Russia and for their future. So he needs to find a way out. The way out, Diane, is for him to pull his troops out of Ukraine. That's caused this problem. He's caused this problem. That's his off-ramp, pull the Russians out of Ukraine.
All right, Ambassador William Taylor, we appreciate your time today, as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.